Take it away, Dr. Rebecca.
So a little summary on cyclops headaches or pituitary headaches. So the pituitary is the master controller of the body and its rhythms. It sends signals to the adrenal glands. It sends it to the pancreas, thyroid, gonads. It's also going to send it to the liver, right? Yeah. So should I go through all the points?
The
Well,
testing
okay.
points? Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Just what did you get from last week's from watching it online, which is really interesting to us?
From watching it, I would say the hype, in general, I would say that everything is communicating with everything. So you have to really double check what is going on in the body and see where the wire is tripped up. So there's so many little blips that can go wrong. So you really have to make sure that you're checking for autoimmune with double checking both spleen on both sides, these points, which is the elbow against your rib is right where the spleen point would be, and then both sides would be autoimmune.
Mhm.
Not everybody does muscle testing here. I don't know, maybe.
It's okay. We'll act as if
But
those are, and if they can just tune that part out, right? If they're not.
yeah.
Or get teased. Maybe they should.
So another big thing something that I learned was that insulin can disrupt the thyroid. I didn't really realize how much that could happen. But yes, the pituitary secretes TSH, telling the thyroid we need to rev up metabolism, and then that happens, and then the signal goes to T4 goes to the liver where glucuronidation happens, and I'm curious about where that point is again, Dr. Reed.
Liver's here. Let's see, camera. Camera's following my face. Come on, camera. Yeah, camera.
It's gonna go right back to
Follow my
your face.
fingers. Come on, follow my fingers. So it is
So is it,
so
you can
liver,
just
so it's
describe
going
it
to
with
be
your
about
words.
there. Yeah, it's about the seventh intercostal space.
How do you find it?
So the hand over the liver covers all the points, basically from the thenar eminence being acetylation, and then sulfation's next to that, and then the fingertip, long finger where the elbow reaches the side, that's P450 when it's unilateral, when it's just on the right side. And so like two rib intercostal spots from there would be the glucuronidation point.
It's on the poster right behind him up there. I don't know if you could
Right.
get more to zoom in on that, but yeah.
How do we go like that?
Just put your face right on it.
Yeah, put your face right next to glucuronidation for us, would you?
It's supposed to be narrowing it. Come on, keep going, keep going.
Can you see that green
just tell me
Yeah, right there.
Can you
what system is that? What
points?
platform?
What is it?
The poster is by Dr. Vrzal.
Oh, Dr. Vrzal. Okay, thank you. Okay.
And so
Thanks.
basically, I've determined all the referred pain points for all the liver pathways by using the challenge substances that, like great smokies, that the labs use to challenge. In the early days of testing liver detox pathways, they would give a person acetaminophen and caffeine and chocolate and things like that to challenge the various pathways, and then they'd measure the elimination, and that's how they would give a functional funk med perspective on the liver pathway. So I use those challenge substances to figure out where each pathway referred pain over the liver, and that's how I came up with those 7 points. And been doing them for 15, 20 years, and they still hold true.
And I'm still trying to memorize them.
I know I need to create a mnemonic, I guess. That would be let's see, PGGMSA.
Well, I gave you the idea, so.
Yeah. Put your name on the poster too. PGG. Let's see. Please give God more.
We'll get
Work
it.
on that.
We'll get it. Yeah.
I'm gonna be thinking
We'll
about
sleep
that while
on
we. Yeah. Let's see. Quick groundation. Quick groundation. There's a pathway missing in there. Keep going. I'm listening.
Glutathione conjugation, I don't think is up there.
Oh, glucuronidation.
So we also test for the thyroid and manual muscle test the thyroid to make sure that's all working out because that could be causing a problem. The signal going back to the pituitary could be causing the headache too because there's a communication that way. There's communication everywhere. So we want to check, but the right side is hypothyroid, correct? And the left is hyper.
Left is typically going to be reverse T3, but yeah.
Reverse T3, yeah.
Yeah.
But for the thyroid, you want to check iodine.
Hypo, yes.
Sorry, I'm a little bit putting all the pieces together, trying to make the story.
See what happens when you have to make it up afterwards.
Yeah. Don't show up for class. Yeah. Let's see. Manganese. We test for the pituitary to make sure that is there to help it function. Also, pituitrophin PMG. Of course, we want to test for any toxic metals. Yeah. Trying to think of what else. Well, okay, I'll go through all the points since I'm going with the points. So we're doing the thyroid points. We did liver, so now we have pancreas as well. And then we also have the adrenal points, which is 2 inches lateral, 2 inches above the belly button, right? On both
Correct.
sides.
Yes. Left is
Hypo.
left is hyper. Left is hyper. Right
Left
is
is hyper.
hypo.
And then we have, if you want to check hormones, you can go right at the, like where the femoral artery is on both sides.
Yeah, just inferior to the ASIS.
Yeah.
So you're not having to try to cut them open and find the artery.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just listening to last month, and the anterior pituitary produces growth hormone ACTH, which is for the adrenals. Anterior pituitary also secretes TSH, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and prolactin. And prolactin also helps with sleep and dopamine. I wanted to know, and that kind of segues into our sleep talk.
Well done.
Any questions on the synopsis?
From now on, we're going to keep these recordings and I'll make them much more available for everybody. I'm going to actually download them to YouTube so everybody has access to just watch them at any time, anywhere.
Great.
Everybody's okay with that.
Yep.
Yeah. We've Dr. V and I have a meeting every Monday where we kind of try to sort out truth from fiction in the world of nutrition. And so we decided to start recording those too. So you guys have access to those too, if you want.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Yeah. So sleep, you guys ready for me to jump in?
Yep.
So from a muscle testing standpoint, it's interesting. I came across different results with people when they were laying down, if they had their eyes open or if had their eyes closed. And so I don't know if I'm the only person who does this. I don't know if this is common, but so now when I muscle test somebody, I take them through the process of how I muscle test them, and then I do it again with their eyes closed. And for me, that has really correlated a lot with what is affecting their sleep and how well they're sleeping. So if we're doing like the neurotransmitter point, a lot of times that will show up on the right side when they have their eyes closed. It wouldn't be when their eyes were open, but when their eyes closed, it goes weak. And so I found this as a useful thing to play with and helping people get much better sleep. And I'll share with you a lot of the things that show up in the muscle testing. But my goal with this presentation, full disclosure, I just put it together in the last 2 hours. So I appreciate you guys pointing out any issues with it. But I'm really hoping this is like a true collaboration on sleep today, because there are so many people who are coming to me with sleep disturbances, not being able to fall asleep, not being able to stay asleep, and the usual things. It's getting a little more complicated, right? We're needing more and more tools. Dr. V and I discussed this week about L-Reuteri and its role in producing oxytocin and how much oxytocin can impact a great night's sleep without any type of disturbances. And I have to say, from personal exposure to it and increasing, my sleep has improved, right, a lot. So anything that you guys want to throw in on this will be great, but I'm just going to take you through my little journey into sleep here. And I'm going to share the screen now so that I can do that for you. All right. There we go. Everybody can see that?
Yes.
Cool, because that's what we want to do, right? We want to sleep like a baby. I mean, not 14 to 16 hours a day, but maybe, maybe we do. So background, first of all, it really caught my attention because I was just learning that so many people just weren't respecting sleep at all. And as we were discussing before we started, I always start with digestion as a nutritionist, because if you're not digesting the nutrients, it doesn't matter what nutrients we're getting in there or what herbs. If you can't use them and assimilate them, it's a non-starter. And I'm starting to feel as though sleep is the second, because when people are sleep deprived, their decision-making processes are greatly diminished. Their their judgment is impaired. So no matter what best intentions they may have, after you tell them, yeah, you need to take these supplements, you need to do these exercises, this is what we need to do to get you better. If they're not getting enough sleep, they're making a decision that isn't in support of their health overall, and they're probably going to choose to eat something bad and stay up late and do bad things. So it's become more and more important to me to want to get people more sleep. So it's about 2000, I don't know, 16 or 17, when I came across this TED Talk from Russell Foster. And it's a really great one. If you guys, still watch TED Talks, I love them. He really highlighted that sleep is not only crucial for our health, but also tied to our brain function. Talked about what happens when we sleep. Mental health, as you all know, that is like my number one thing that I'm always going to take an opportunity to talk about. And overall overall well-being. So he calls for a cultural shift to better understand this. He talked about it being essential for survival. In fact, he said, people used to think of sleep as like an upgrade from economy to first class, but he said, if you don't sleep, you just don't fly. And I agree with that. He talked about how it serves many functions, restoring energy, consolidating memory, supporting immune function, promoting cellular repair. So much for the brain, protection against neurodegenerative diseases. He talked about the importance of circadian rhythms. We were talking earlier about consistency and going to bed at the same time every night being very important. And of course, again, that mental health connection really caught my attention. But here's some of the biggest takeaways that I wanted to share with you guys that I remember from this. He talked about studies where people would only get 4 to 5 hours of sleep. And in these men, this will get your attention, gave men who slept only 4 hours of sleep the testosterone of somebody 10 years older than them. So it literally took 10 years off of their testosterone life, just like that. Somebody who slept 5 hours or less was also associated with 50% increase in obesity, right? Which is a huge, huge problem. And of course, we can chase it with all these other things, but if we're not sleeping, it's still going to be contributing to that. Like I said, poor judgment was a huge piece with it. Creativity and memory. These are 3x'd when you get good sleep. You get better judgment, 3 times better judgment, 3 times better creativity, and 3 times the memory capacity. He talked about how sleep predict all-cause mortality in here, which is very interesting. And here was one that I really caught my attention right now with this quademic happening of all these viruses flying around at higher levels than ever. One night, if you get 4 hours of sleep, just that one night, in a single night, you get a 70% reduction in natural killer cell activity the next day.
Wow.
Unbelievable how much that can really devastate you. And so, and we take that and we look at the correlation between a lack of sleep and cancer. And in this video, he actually stated that shift working has been known or called a known carcinogen, just because it's so rugged on the body having to do that. And the daylight savings time piece that he talked about, which is really interesting, that on daylight savings, when we spring forward, when we lose that hour, there's a 24% increase in heart attacks happening in the spring
Yes.
on that day. And a 20% reduction in the fall when we fall back and get that extra sleep. And these numbers are almost identical with suicide rates. So clearly, I think that putting more and more attention on sleep, obviously, is something that will only benefit everybody that we're trying to help for all those reasons. So that led me to read another book, and Dr. Viernard always in a competition, so you can read the most books the fastest, but he's always listening to his while he's riding his bike, so he's got an edge on me. So next I read The Sleep Revolution, Arianna Huffington, right? This kind of helped give permission to all of the hustlers out there to sleep. So it really hit on the importance of sleep. It's critical for mental and physical health. Of course, she talked about the epidemic of sleep deprivation, how our society tends to undervalue sleep. Talked about how restorative and the power is of it. She talked about technology and sleep. Dr. Rebecca just mentioned that a little bit. Looking at your cell phone before going to bed really, really messes you up. And then redefining success in general, just talking about how, we really want to define success more to include rest as a cornerstone of well-being. And I really liked how she put that. So these are really good inspirational books. And that led me to one final book that I thought was really great by a guy named Sean Stevenson. And he talked about 21 essential strategies to sleep your way to better health, better body, better health, and bigger success. And I loved this book. And so here's the 21 things that he talked about. Number one, again, is prioritizing sleep. And I think that's so interesting because people do kind of throw it away. They don't really think of it as this essential medicine that we need every day. Talked about setting a consistent sleep schedule, creating a sleep-friendly environment, making sure your bedroom is set for that, limiting your screen exposure, using the bed only for sleep, dimming the lights, limiting caffeine. So here's all 21, and you guys will be able to read these a little bit later, but I also did create my own in-office handout for people when they were telling me they weren't sleeping that was kind of based a lot off of that. So what I did is I just kind of created a do's and don'ts checklist for people to say, okay, well, let's look at this list on the right here and say, which of these do you think you can currently actually change, right? Don't do them all at once, but what's one that we can do to take you one step closer to it? And I always put it again at the top, knowing the value of sleep and really wanting to go to sleep. And there are people who really get it and they love it. And then there are those people who fight it every night. They never want to go to sleep and they wake up miserable the next day. I did think this is really important. Also getting more natural sunlight during the day. And of course, the earlier in the day, the better, right? We could get it all into the deep science of what's happening with the different levels of light at that time of the day and how it's affecting our pineal gland. But just telling people to get out and just standing in the sun for a few minutes in the morning can really be profoundly changing for your sleep. Giving yourself a caffeine curfew. This is one that directly speaks to me. So my staff won't let me have coffee after noon anymore because I value sleep so much, no matter how much I love coffee. Keeping it cool in the bedroom. I thought that was neat. In this book, he discusses this study where they had a group of insomniacs versus just normal group of people. And when they put cooling caps, just the caps, just on their head to reduce the temperature on their head to 60 to 68 degrees, they wound up getting better sleep than the control group just from doing that one thing. So it's not like you have to have your feet out and cold and freezing. Just letting your head be cool can make a huge difference for sleep. Of course, choosing the right time. I always talk about this. Between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is what he would call the money sleep. And that's when your body is getting so much benefit So making sure that you are getting to bed and hopefully asleep by 10 p.m. I also heard somebody put it this way: every hour of sleep before midnight is worth 2 hours after midnight. And I don't know about that, but it's a nice thing to say to encourage people to go to bed earlier. There's a big piece, and of course, your microbiome and digestion. As a nutritionist, I could go on and on about that. But turning off electrical devices at least 30 minutes before bed, really setting this routine to program your brain to say, okay, when I turn this off in about a half an hour, I'm going to be bed. All of that routine really makes a difference. Completely darkening the bedroom as much as possible. He also talked in the book about people completely in absolute darkness, and they would take a pen light and just shine it on the back of their knee when they couldn't see anything else, and it would disturb their sleep. So any photons touching any skin
Wow.
can actually impact your level of sleep. Of course, exercise every day, preferably in the morning. And I got to tell you, I've finally got my morning exercise routine down, and I see it reflected really well in my sleep. And I do monitor my sleep now with an Oura ring, just so I can get it, see the real feedback as to how it's impacting me. And that sleep sanctuary is a big piece for it. Actually, just making sure that your room where you're sleeping is comfortable, safe. You've got plants in there, or if you open a window before you go to bed, as part of just changing the ionization in the air. It can be very, very important. And of course, the don'ts are basically the opposite of that.
Dustin,
Yeah, go ahead.
have you had anybody use the shungite paint in their bedroom yet? How's that worked out?
I will be the first person to do that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't painted it yet, but I do have it in my sanctuary here at the office. And when I take a nap in there, oh yeah, it's great. I got to tell you.
Nice.
So hopefully we'll see. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Mhm.
So anything you guys, as you're looking at this and you're thinking of things, of course, there's probably more we could add, but I'm really open to you making suggestions, or if you think actually this is probably the most important thing, let me know as we continue on. But of course, as a nutritionist, I also want to educate people on the foods that they're missing that could truly be the difference between them sleeping and not. And of course, minerals are huge, right? Calcium, potassium, selenium, magnesium. There's studies that are associated with all of those that are impacting sleep in a bad way. And then, of course, I wanted to give them great food sources, bioavailable food sources, to help them integrate these into their life in a way that will eventually get them to a night of better sleep. Same thing with vitamins, Slumberland vitamins we have down here, your C's, your B's, your D's, your omegas, and your tryptophan. And as you look at this list, you can see that these are all very commonly missing from most people's diets, the average person's diet. Same thing with the minerals at the top. So I'm always looking to figure out, in order of importance, what's truly missing and how do we layer these in to get people feeling even better. Because here's the alternative, right? This is what people have been doing. And this is what a huge wake-up call for me was in 2024. This article came out. It was actually in CNN. I don't know if you guys remember this, but thousands of children were going to the ER after ingesting melatonin without supervision. This was, just from gummies, right? And everybody thinks it's okay. And what they discovered is that the amount of melatonin that's being reported in almost all that they assayed was completely inconsistent. They could say there's 1 milligram, but there was like 15 milligrams in there, because it's not regulated and it's not completely controlled. And I will say this, melatonin, you have to have a prescription to get melatonin in Europe, right? It's not a joke. And I don't think it's okay that we just throw melatonin at people to put them to sleep. And I know there's a lot of debate on this, and people say, oh, but it's, Dr. Berg says it helps you with your cancer. And yeah, but what we should be figuring out is, why isn't our body making our own melatonin, right? What can we do to support that? Because if we skip the steps and just give our body the melatonin, the problem that's keeping our body from making it in the first place is not going to go away, and it's going to show up as something else. And I'll remind you all, serotonin is the precursor to melatonin. And if we have an epidemic of mental health problems in this country, and we're going to accept we're going to accept the premise that it's because people have too low serotonin, well, then it has to follow that we have too low of melatonin as well due to that. And we can go way upstream, right? And understand it's got to come from the tryptophan to make the serotonin, and have all the other cofactors. And that's my whole mental health workshop. But I'm just saying that we need to go and fix the problem upstream, obviously, instead of just throwing melatonin. The prevalence of melatonin use by US adults quintupled from 1990 to 2000. This is a quarter century ago. This rise coincided with a 530% increase in poison center calls for pediatric melatonin exposures. 2012 to 2021, and a 420% increase in emergency department visits for unsupervised melatonin ingestion by infants. So this is a problem. And I don't think it's okay. And no offense if anybody's doing this right now, I'm not wagging my finger at you. I'm just inviting us all to reevaluate whether or not we should be suggesting melatonin for anybody at all. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. B.
Just to kind of circle back on your serotonin aspect, if serotonin's too high and not converting, therefore not converting to melatonin, the two primary nutrients to convert serotonin to melatonin is B12 and magnesium, wouldn't you know?
Interesting enough.
So there's, the person that's anxious and can't sleep, then they're often not converting serotonin to melatonin. So that's where magnesium starts to really shine.
Absolutely. I've become a much greater fan in the last few months of the whole food magnesium Easy Mag. I take 4 before bed every night now. That's where I find my sweet spot. I find that has reflected in deeper sleep and greater REM sleep with my Oura Ring. And my patient population that has the Oura Ring as well have 100% reported the same thing. So I think that's tremendous to be able to have that conversion. But let's also think about the fact, if you're on a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, right, you're keeping that serotonin from being able to move on to the next life cycle of melatonin, because you're blocking it from being able to be reuptook in the brain. So of course it's going to follow that if somebody's on an SSRI, they're going to start to have low melatonin and bad sleep. Would you all agree with that statement? Let me know if I'm wrong. Okay. So I have reevaluated a lot in the last few months as I've really taken a much closer look at how my sleep is affected by certain nutrients. And I'm not ashamed to say that I've had some pretty strong opinions about vitamin D supplementation and trying to be a purist when it comes to nature and get it from sunlight and cod liver oil. But I've started to really understand that the lack of exposure to sunlight is just, you have to do something to make up for it. And I don't think cod liver oil is enough. So I started taking a lot closer look at vitamin D and sleep. And this is where when I think of sleep, I think about the things that we should be doing in the evening. For me, that's magnesium and a few other things. And the things that we should be doing in the morning or when the sun is up, and that's vitamin D. And so there's so much information out there about vitamin D. Of course, the research says that there's emerging evidence that suggests a novel function of D is the maintenance of regulation and optimal sleep. But again, I would really want to encourage sunlight exposure as your vitamin D, but it's just not, as I heard somebody say the other day, the best thing for someone, the best vitamin or the best action for their health is the one that they can actually do, right? If I tell people to go out and sleep and they don't have time to do it, they're not actually going to do it. So we have to find something they'll actually do. And what I've taken to doing is, of course, checking people's vitamin D and really recognizing that so many people are pretty darn low. And Dr. V and I could talk for hours about why and how and what's going on. There's so many things impacting that, sulfation pathway issues, right? But the prevalence is pretty huge, right? And it makes sense that it's huge. Hardly anybody's getting enough sun. And if they're eating fish, they're probably not eating enough fish to get the vitamin D that they need to be getting. And so it is a big issue. And so I've actually started incorporating into people's routine, especially those who drive to work, is that they keep their vitamin D in their car and they take it right when they get in the car before they go to work. And then when they get to work, they take some more. That's just the way I set it up to say, at least I know you're getting some vitamin D in the morning if you're not getting it from the sunlight. I'm just finding ways to kind of build it into people's lives to make it a reality. Seems to work. And then Dr. V just mentioned magnesium, and that's another one that I've had a much greater respect for. Of course, we don't need studies to show us that we need magnesium and D to sleep, but our clinical experience has taught us this. But of course, you know, it's helpful to also have research that supports it. And of course, it's not surprising. Magnesium deficiency has been associated with sleep disorders, which magnesium supplementation has alleviated. And the prevalence of magnesium deficiency, just like vitamin D, is massive, right? It's the fourth most abundant mineral in the body. The standard diet in the United States contains only approximately 50% of what we need, meaning that as much as half of the total population is magnesium deficient, according to the study. Magnesium status is low in populations who consume processed foods high in fats, refined grains, sugars, and phosphate, according to the study. So yes, we're definitely eating a lot of sugar that's wiping out the magnesium. We're not bringing enough magnesium in. And I think I always take issue with, you know, whoever decided how much magnesium people need anyway, considering the amount of biochemical reactions in the body happening every second that require it. I think it's even greater than what we realize. Now I'm going to pause before I go into this last piece here. The form of magnesium, I'm definitely becoming much more vocal about as well. I got to speak to some really incredible PhDs about magnesium supplements like magnesium threonate, magnesium glycinate, magnesium oxide, magnesium malate, all of those. And he explained to me that the only reason that they know what those are is because they had to make them in a lab with magnesium oxide treated with one of those acids. Otherwise, you can't actually know what forms are all in a food without destroying it and using a solvent to break it apart. And then you don't have the fully formed version of it anymore, which is really interesting. But I digress. I'll talk about that another time. But to tie these two together, vitamin D cannot be metabolized without sufficient magnesium levels, right? So these are two really important pieces that I've started to discover that if all else is not failing, if I really start increasing that D and that magnesium together, which I never give one without the other these days anymore, the sleep definitely improves. Now, does it become perfect? No, but these are two massive pieces that I want to remind us all that we can identify, and it makes a lot of sense to people that they can get those. So beyond that, of course, there's so many other things that are epidemic, right, in the United States, stress levels being huge. I do my best to educate as many people about sleep and adrenal stress, especially when you get into the exhaustion phase where you have that difficulty sleeping due to erratic cortisol surges, which again leads me to things that sometimes when I'm muscle testing somebody and I need to give them something to help with their sleep, it could be very well be adrenal complex, right? Or it could be something that is supporting their adrenals in the morning to help their body get things back into a rhythm that is more aligned with nature. And of course, you guys know that ashwagandha at night will help take that cortisol level down, and melatonin cannot surge until cortisol has dropped out. And then finally, before we get into a little more discussion, I wanted to just touch on how much sleep is best. And I think there's a lot of debate here. I think the amount of sleep we need really depends on the amount of activity that we've had in the day and how hard the day has been and how much our body needs to recover after the day. But I do think we need a lot more recovery time than we're giving ourselves as Americans. But it was very interesting. I looked at two separate studies, and one was looking at meta-analyses, and it really came to this interesting sweet spot of about 7 hours a night, people living the longest. Of course, I talked earlier about 5 and below being just devastating for so many things. But it was interesting, they started pointing at 9 hours, over 9 hours is actually starting to give some people a negative return. And we could speculate on a lot of reasons for that. But I think that's interesting that when people ask, you know, what should I be targeting for? I usually tell people, well, you sleep in like 1.5-hour cycles. So I try to shoot for 7.5 every night. But I'll notice now that my sleep is getting tighter and better and more consolidated that I'll wake up at 7 hours and 15 minutes and feel fantastic, right? And that's what my little device will also support. So back when I was trying to figure out protocols and things to give people the easy button on sleep, if I didn't have time to talk to them, if I didn't have time to really learn about who they are and what they're doing and what they're not doing, I was trying to find things that just because I know they need to get some sleep, what are the things that I have found over the years to really help people relax and chill and fall asleep. Now, I may change this, right? But this was my first good bundle go-to. It was Minchex. Now, Minchex will help with, of course, somebody who's got anxiety. It's going to give you that vitamin B6. It's going to give you the minerals, right, to help calm you down. And I find that a lot of times when people are just too amped up at night because they have too high levels of cortisol, that the Minchex did help chill them out quite a bit. And the Nevaton, I get probably the greatest, if I'm going to choose one thing, I would say that the most oftenly for sleep, I do get people reporting that this does make a difference. Because again, it reduces their anxiety, right? It helps just calm them down. I remember it used to be called herbal Valium, is what they would call it. So for a while, this is what, if I, like I said, if I didn't have time to test them, if there was somebody just calling, I can't sleep, what can I do? I'd say, start here, try this first. And this is where I need your feedback. Now I'm starting to think it's vitamin D and magnesium. I don't know, right? We want to know what collectively has been working for people clinically. But if you guys haven't tried this one has shown to be pretty powerful. And then I move on to a better one, right? I go, okay, beyond that, that's a good starting point. If you're still struggling, we just talked about cortisol levels being high at night. We know ashwagandha cuts cortisol levels in half, right? So it really reduces them. Once we get that cortisol low enough, then we can have our own natural surge. And of course, ashwagandha is known as Withania somnifera, right? It's been known for very, very hundreds of years to help with sleep. So who am I to go against hundreds of years of cultural use? And then I added Neuroplex, actually, because muscle testing wise, Neuroplex does reset people's circadian rhythms for me the best. I had a couple of ladies who had to fly to the other side of the planet for a funeral, and they were so concerned about being worthless when they get there because of jet lag. I had them take Neuroplex the day they left, the date when they got there, just continuously, and they had zero jet lag going there and coming back. There's pineal gland support in Neuroplex. There's B6, there's B3, there's solid brain support. So I do find that this is very helpful for sleep as well. And then to add to that, if I'm going to totally stack it all the way out, I finally get to my Easy Mag, is what I was telling people at the end, but now I'm thinking I'm going to put that earlier in the game. And for those people who just really can't, this is not enough to chill them out, kava would be one of those things that I would suggest for them to try to really get them where they're supposed to be. And so this is what I've been working with in the easy button category, but I'm looking to create a complete checklist, right? Because as we go, we want to learn more about that person and say, well, have we talked about this? Have we talked about that? But just recently, this was on February 4th, I just took a snapshot of that because I feel like I've kind of dialed in my personal protocol at night. And I was finally able to get over 2 hours of REM sleep, an hour and a half of deep sleep. And this is what my sleep's starting to look like these days. But I'm even getting that amount of REM and deep sleep with less total sleep. And my energy levels have been phenomenal, obviously, working out in the morning and doing all of the lifestyle things as well. So really quick little piece I just wanted to share with you guys and see what do you think and what was I missing. Not everybody all at once, though.
I would say not eating like 3 hours before bed
Yeah,
is a huge one, because if your body's still digesting as you fall asleep, then your body's too busy digesting all your food rather than doing the healing thing at night.
that's absolutely great. Yeah, I definitely try to stop eating by 6 o'clock if possible, personally. I don't know if the rest of you do. And that was on Sean Stevenson's list of his 21 things was, let's see, avoid heavy meals before bed is what he says. But I think you're right. 3 hours before bed is a really good rule.
I've noticed that with my Aura Ring too, that whenever I eat even just earlier and less carbs for dinner, hardly any carbs for dinner, more if I have carbs more for lunch or breakfast, then my sleep is just amazing.
Nice.
So
You said so the amount of carbs really impact your sleep specifically.
yeah, if I had carbs at dinner, it would probably drop my sleep score like 10 points.
Wow. Okay.
So it must be like a glucose spike with an adrenal response that stopped the deep sleep from happening.
Nice.
But
Okay.
I like encouraging a lifestyle change, but then also a supplementation is really just, I mean, the best thing you can do. They have to eliminate something and incorporate something new.
Right. Cool.
So, Dustin, do you incorporate that list of the vitamins you just told us all at once in the evening, or is it over the course of the day?
That's a great question. So these are, so oftentimes I'm traveling and I'm just, and people are always asking me questions, and I hate to leave somebody in a lurch and not help them, especially when it comes to sleep. So I created these as quick and easy ways for them to get them. But I would say I wouldn't have a problem taking any of those at night. Yeah, so they would all probably be at night. The one exception might be Neuroplex. I do tend to suggest people take Neuroplex in the morning, but I haven't seen it disturb anybody's sleep at night, and I can't see why it would either. And I know Joseph Antel always suggests taking it first thing in the morning and last thing at night. So I don't think he's ever seen any problems with that either, I recall. And that's, I'm sorry.
I had a question.
I was just going to finish up, and so this is more towards the nighttime things. Because when you think about the layperson, when you're talking about sleep, that's what they're thinking. They're going to take their melatonin and go to sleep, right? They're going to take the thing that puts them to sleep. And so this is what I was trying to do, is create a more healing protocol for them to sleep, as opposed to them just chowing down a bunch of melatonin or drinking a glass of wine, which tends to be a lot of people's solution to sleep. But to truly get them well, I do think that it's really important to also support morning things for the morning. I'll also say that chaste tree has been really helpful for a lot of people. It's dopaminergic, but it also helps with melatonin, correcting melatonin levels. So it's been known to be helpful for shift workers as well. So often when I'm muscle testing somebody, eyes closed, neurotransmitters are off, chaste tree will correct that for them, men and women, both.
Okay, I always think of chaste tree for women. I didn't realize that it applies to modulating hormones in men too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. For dopamine and melatonin, it may be the piece that kind of helps put things together for a lot of people.
Is there a known effect on testosterone with chase tree? Because I know the name chase was from chastening herb for the monks and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the research on it, but if testosterone's your goal, then you might want to look at other options before. Yeah.
Right.
Dr. Rebecca, you said you had a question?
Yeah, I think Dr. V will probably know this better. Based on the clock, we were talking about how well sleep is. Is it true that waking up between 2 and 4 is a sign of an adrenal stress problem? Is that the exact time?
I use 1 to 3 for liver, 3 to 5 lung, 5 to 7 colon. That's the 2-hour windows for an acupuncture 24-hour clock.
So there's no adrenal one.
I think adrenals
So
would be multiple times waking up, right?
right. So adrenals would be that they're unable. So the more unstable blood sugar is, the more the person wakes up at night. This is kind of my rule of thumb. That's kind of my objective measure of how unstable their blood sugar is. So if they're waking up at random times or 2 hours after they go to bed, regardless of when they go to bed, then yes, I'm looking at adrenals, hypoglycemia, noradrenaline, which is the carbohydrate stuff you were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's always, between 1 and 3, then I'm looking to correct liver function because that's their liver alarm going off. 3 to 5, we're seeing a lot of that right now with the virus going around. So that always kind of blows people's mind when I'm treating them. Oh, you have lung issues, and how disrupted is your sleep between 3 and 5? Well, how'd you know, doc? And then we're a hero because we're telling them what's going on. Or they wake up coughing between 3 and 5 in the morning. So those are signs of need for lung support. And then, if they're taking the wrong probiotic or they're eating stuff that's messing with their gut or, that sort of stuff, then they'll wake up, between 5 and 7. or have restful sleep between 5 and 7. So then we got the emotional aspect. You know, somebody's going through a significant loss, grief, sadness, yearning. Those are all emotions that are both lung and large intestine. So if the second half of their sleep, right, figure that's the 3 to 5 and 5 to 7. So during the season of loss, then we might want to do, you know, emotional work to help them get through the grieving process, or like I use the NET remedy, metal, for that sort of stuff. So there's the bullet point, cliff notes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then trouble falling asleep seems more like anxiety, can't shut off the mind, need to turn off social media, meditate.
Yeah, high cortisol. And these days, I'll tell you another thing that I should probably put on that list is not eating enough protein. So they're just flat out not getting enough tryptophan to make serotonin, to make melatonin. It's just it's an absolute deficiency, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's on like a semaglutide or some type of weight loss regime or protocol or medication. They're just not getting enough protein. So protofood actually has turned out to be a winner for a lot of people to get them sleep.
Especially when they're waking up multiple times during the night.
Yeah.
So neurotransmitter wise, Rebecca, what you just described is glutamate is the awake and excited neurotransmitter. GABA is what, so glutamate needs to convert to GABA to shut the brain off and go to sleep at night. So if we are PTSD or a concussion, the GABA, excuse me, glutamate is the metabolic byproduct of neurodegeneration. So that's going to be the person that's going to have trouble sleeping and trouble falling asleep. And then, you know, a whole nother aspect, whole nother conversation is melatonin. In the presence of melatonin, the brain shrinks, and that's when the lymphatic system goes to work. So we need that deep, restful sleep to shrink and cleanse and heal the brain. So we need to convert the glutamate to GABA. That process predominantly happens in the sulfation pathway in the liver. So we need the liver functioning better. Again, I've talked about this on practically every podcast, but the Lyme pathogens inhibit the sulfation pathway. So if they've got, you know, spirochete, a parasite or a virus that's in within that Lyme family that's inhibiting sulfation, they're going to have trouble falling asleep. They're going to be anxious. They're going to be that person that's wound and, you know, what does Carrie call it? Stressed and obsessed or whatever for, you know, his tagline for ashwagandha. So anyway, so facilitating sulfation, my favorite herb for that is milk thistle, typically, to facilitate sulfation to help them fall asleep. So starting point for me from a protocol perspective, they're having trouble falling asleep. First thing I typically would test would be milk thistle. Otherwise, possibly live ton if they're constipated. Live ton's can help, you know, produce bile. Livoplex sometimes, that sort of stuff at bedtime.
At bedtime.
At bedtime.
Okay. Gotcha.
Whenever I do a liver cleanse, my sleep is also amazing. Yeah.
Nice.
Not that it's ever really bad, but you
Yeah.
can tell with the aura really nice how the quality that you're getting.
Right. And remember, the liver's, in addition to muscles, it's a glycogen storage, right? So if we're having unstable blood sugar, if the liver's not functioning well, then we have trouble keeping. So the brain's only energy source is glucose. So if the more unstable blood sugar is, the more it's a crisis for the brain. And so that's why hypoglycemic symptoms are all mental, emotional, you know, the hangries and so on. But then that's also going to manifest in sleep for sure.
And on that glutamate point, we talked a lot about lithium helping clear excess glutamate. So
and stimulate microglial production, which is post-concussion, post-PTSD. That microglial is like, think of that as the white blood cells of the brain, right? So we lose that protective mechanism that's why the second and subsequent concussions are more traumatic, more significant, because microglial function has already been compromised. So lithium, especially as that fine product that we all love, great minds with lithium, you know, is the bomb when that shows up. Sometimes Regenex. I usually compare the two.
But the clue for me, if they need lithium, is if they're really fast and they're talking, right? They think too fast, they talk too fast. everything's super fast. It's just super high glutamate, and it's not getting cleared out of the synapse into the glial cells. And so that's where lithium is a true important piece to be able to just slow down that glutamate. Get it
Really
going.
nice pearl right
But I'm
there.
going to try Neuroregenix as well for that too now.
So my favorite, the first pearl I had for lithium deficiency was suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
So that's a big one with that. Yeah. So that just stopped those overnight. It was pretty profound.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely profound.
So that's mercury, right? So the other, so I mean, we can, sorry, I keep taking it over. But
Do it. Take it over.
So lithium is, mercury seems to compete for lithium, create a functional lithium deficiency. So when I see mercury, especially from amalgams that's been, implanted in the brain, lithium or great minds with lithium, a lithium product is typically what I would use to push the mercury start pushing the mercury out of the brain. No, and again, goes along with so mercury toxic metals cause low serotonin. So there's our depression, right? And then the suicidal ideations and so on. So that's likely where, part of the mechanism with the lithium benefit for the low serotonin, for the toxic metals, mercury, especially compromising brain function.
Let's get it out of our water.
Yeah. In Texas, the lithium you're talking about, or mercury?
Mercury, yeah.
Oh, and fluoride. That's
Fluoride,
one.
yeah.
Well, RFK got sworn in today, so hopefully the fluoride's going to be out tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Cool. Anybody with any other magic pills that help people sleep that we've missed?
I had three. Dr. Vrzal just mentioned the mercury issue with more detail, but then, inflammation in the brain, inflammation in the gut, right? Leaky gut issues, right? So gut on fire, brain on fire. And then there's a product by Gaia Pro that works on an alpha wave intrusion in your sleep. So you're in the delta wave pattern, and if you get an alpha wave intrusion on it, then you have disrupted sleep. And so the product is Somnimint Rosmarinic Complex. It's from the Pro line on Gaia. And so the rosmarinic acid seems to really help with sleep. You take 2 before bed.
What kind of acid you said?
Rosmarinic.
Rosmarinic. Okay, I have to learn about that.
Yeah, it's from Whole Foods sources. I haven't seen any good results with that.
The herb that used to be the bomb to convert glutamate to GABA was phenobut, but it worked, so they got it. So it got yanked off the market. So, yeah, Biotics used to have a phenotropic or something like that, they called it. But that got pulled a few years ago.
I had a patient recently, a young hairdresser, who she, her muscles were tight, upper neck and arm issues, and she couldn't sleep. So I tested a couple of things. I do kinesiology also, and I found, I don't know if you use DC Labs, Formula 303. I thought it might help with the muscular tension, and it tested well for her. And the next day she said to me, I haven't slept so good in years. So I guess it all depends, right, on the source of the problem. And that's why, to me, I don't know how, I love doing my kinesiology to see what's going to work for that person, because I wouldn't think of 303 to help necessarily with a good sleep, but it worked for her. So
What is that product? Is it a magnesium or a?
it's from DC Labs. It's an old company, chiropractic based. It's a homeopathic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's a very, very safe, and, it doesn't, it's sometimes my first go-to when someone has like muscular spasm.
Nice.
It's a combination of magnesium, passion flower, and
Hops.
No,
I don't remember exactly
it-
everything in it.
a,
It's a combination.
there are 3 things in it. I'll
Okay,
think
thank
of
you.
it.
That's all right. Thank you. Mhm.
Well, valerian's one we haven't talked about, but I find
Valerian.
that valerian usually takes a
That's
couple of
mhm.
weeks before it really starts to take effect for people.
Mm.
Which is good to have if you can get them to consistently do it for 2 weeks. But people, when they don't get results quickly, tend to, their compliance goes down. Adherence.
You know, this happens overnight, so I guess just had the right combination for her.
Mhm.
And
I remember one of the MediHerb reps telling me that Nervagesic was their first go-to for sleep too, which I remember hearing that and trying it a couple times, and it didn't seem to muscle test for people. So I guess I just forgot about it until just now, thinking about that. I don't even know what's in Nervagesic, to tell you the truth, because I barely use it.
About
I've
hemp
used lemon balm too.
Mm.
Works
Perfect timing.
great.
Lemon balm works great for kids.
What was that?
Lemon balm works very well for children.
How about
just
hemp?
as a plain lemon balm supplement, or in combination with something else,
Like an essential oil, right?
or an
I
essential
use
oil.
Restful Mind Support by Doctor's Research. Has it?
Restful mind.
Oh, that's the ones.
And Herb Farm has it's called Lemon Balm Calm for children. It's designed for children. I don't remember what else is in it.
What company is that?
Herb Farm.
Oh, Herb Farm. Okay.
When I was teaching in Michigan years ago, different time zone and everything, and I was having trouble falling asleep. So I got all desperate and frustrated, took a couple hemp complex right before I went to bed, or when I don't know, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning their time or something, and slept through my alarm and everything else. I was supposed to be treating a bunch of people before the seminar, and woke up to 5 messages on my phone. Where are you? What are you doing?
Whoops.
Oops. Talk about impromptus. I went running, threw on a shirt and kind of finger comb my hair, went running downstairs and let's go. Yeah.
Well, seeing as that it is 9:30 p.m. Central Time, and that is outside of my normal bedtime circadian rhythm, I'm going to try to wrap this up in the spirit. But the 13th of March work for everybody for next month. I just want to make sure that that's a good. And I don't think we have a topic yet, unless Dr. V, you want to tackle L-Rudery or another headache, or anybody's ready to jump on something.
I'd like to hear more about the L-Rudery.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. We could dive deeper into the microbiome. The interesting thing about L-Rudery is, we've been taught that the jejunum is supposed to be sterile for a long time, and I think that's because when they were observing the populations, it's because everybody's had an antibiotic and it's wiped out L-Rudery, which is supposed to be in the small intestine. So I think we should. We'll talk about we'll do a whole presentation on oxytocin and L-Rudery next time. How's that sound?
Are we gonna give them access to your Facebook, or to your YouTube, or are we gonna redo all that?
Yeah. I'll send the YouTube of Dr. V and I discussing it, and then we'll all get into it a little bit deeper, because there's a lot to talk about. I only had like 20 minutes to talk about it or something like that, but yeah.
Yeah, this was good. High energy though. What you said, March 13th is the next one?
13th, yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, I made goat's milk yogurt with L-Rudery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff.
All right. We're doing our first batch right now.
Nice.
Where are you
One
getting?
last thing about sleep that just popped into my brain. I don't know how many of you are musicians or like music or play music, but when I try to learn a song on the guitar for the hour before I go to bed, I tend to get amazing sleep. So
Yeah.
incorporating that into your evening as something that's disconnected from technology, whether it's playing the piano or any type of musical instrument, I encourage you to try that. And I think it will deepen your sleep in a beautiful way.
They call it like a wind down routine.
Yeah. For sure.
Great idea.
Well, super grateful to see you guys all here tonight. I'm going to exit so I can get to sleep. So I look forward to seeing you all next month. And I will if I don't have your email yet, just make sure everybody emails me, Dustin at Strong on Health. And that way I can make sure I send everybody the link of the recording of this and the recording of Dr. B and I discussing L-Rootery, and then we'll get deeper into it next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a great weekend. Good night.